next up is Brad talking about Doc Savage and different names by which he's been known.
G'day. In order to come over here to San Diego, I had to get a lot of documentation to get my passport. And I went to the Queensland Registry of Birth, Deaths and Marriages, and I had to pick up some documentation. I received that in an envelope. When I opened up the envelope, I found a whole heap of information, including some photos and hand-drawn family tree. And it made me wonder, is Doc Savage's real name Clark Savage Jr., as most Doc Savage scholars claim, or is it in fact James Clark Wildman Jr., as Philip Jose Farmer claims in his biography, Doc Savage's apocalyptic life? And are there other members of the Savage family? And in order to reconcile these two viewpoints, which is Doc Savage's real name is in fact Clark Savage Jr. and James Clark Wildman, I started to look into these photos. Now I could never find out who put this information in my envelope, but I did look into it, and I did find out that most of the information was in fact accurate. If you have a look, the first photo, which is on the right-hand side of the screen, is in fact taken from the January 1900 issue of the Strand magazine, and was a profile of Sir William Clayton. Now, he is the older gentleman in that photo. The younger gentleman is his private secretary, known as James Wilder. It wasn't until about 3 years later that the great detective Sherlock Holmes actually went and solved a case involving Sir William Clayton, and he discovered that James Wilder was in fact the son of William Clayton. Forgive me, I'm still nervous. What happened was, Clayton actually had an affair with Patricia Wildman, and she had a baby to him named James Wildman. What had happened was, actually I think I'm getting ahead of myself. Terry Collins had actually revealed in the Doc Savage Superstar Doom Dynasty that Doc Savage's paternal grandfather was Richard Henry Savage. Something like that. Sorry, I had all this in my head and it sounded really cool. Patricia Clark Wildman had an affair with William Clayton, and although Clayton had offered to marry her, Patricia refused to marry him, fearing that her family history of attempting recreative experiments of Victor Frankenstein would ruin his political aspirations. And in fact, she had fallen in love with a soldier of fortune, writer and adventurer named Richard Henry Savage. Now, when Patricia Wildman actually married Richard Henry Savage, he legally adopted James Clark Wildman, who actually then took the name James Clark Savage. Now, and the couple also had another baby. They also had a baby together, Victor Savage, which is actually the top photo. Now, there was no source actually given for that photo, and all my researchers have been unable to locate where this photo had come from. Now, the only thing we know about Victor Savage is that, in fact, he was murdered by his uncle Colton Smith, which is recorded in John H. Watson's accounting of the adventure of the dying detective. But what Watson didn't record was that Victor Savage, in fact, had a young family who he sent off to Queensland in Australia, which is where I'm from. Lucky coincidence, that. Now, what had happened was the son of Victor Savage was in fact John Savage, an Australian millionaire. And you'll see there's a photo near the bottom. I'm dreadfully sorry about the quality of it, but it's actually from the 1930s issue of the Globe newspaper from London, during his last visit to England just before he died. Now, most sources actually thought John Savage had committed suicide due to a fear of cancer, but in fact he'd been murdered, as Agatha Christie recorded in Why Didn't They Ask Evans for the Boomerang Club. So John Savage actually had children, and his granddaughter is Sydney Savage. Now, I tried really hard. I went through all my contacts in ASIO and other intelligence communities that are too secret to name, and I probably shouldn't have said anything. And I could not get a photo of Sydney Savage. I was sort of threatened with the Official Secret Acts of Australia from 1975, and I would have been thrown in jail and never would have actually made it here. Anyway, so I've actually used this artist representation by J. Scott Campbell instead. And Sydney was actually recruited by ASIO, and then she later joined the freelance organisation known as Danger Girl. So as we can see, the Savage legacy is one of adventure and danger.